Secret House.
Secret House again. Welcome back. Thank you guys for jumping in. I feel like when people are excited in the videos, like people stick around, I look at the like analytics and shit, and it'd be like, this person watched your video for 8 seconds before they logged off. And it's just like, where? Really? Like, all right. Maybe I need to come in more excited, but I don't like to do that too often. Thank you for all of our listeners. Thank you guys for leaving comments, all of our patrons. And yeah, man, the Secret House against Tokyo-based hip-hop art and culture conversations about independent, underground, radical, avant-garde, experimental hip-hop primarily, but other genres as well. Mostly hip-hop, though. Today we have got together just me and Jet. L Spade is still in the States, in the continental United States, so hopefully he'll be back soon. Today we're talking about the new album by Chuck Strangers. It is called The Boys and Girls. Nice short listen, only 10 songs, 21 minutes. It came out on Lex Records.
Yeah, that surprised me.
I fucking love Lex
I
Records.
like Lex
man.
Records a lot. I have like a weird history with them in that a good 11, 12 years ago, my girlfriend at the time, who knows nothing about music, doesn't really listen to a lot of music, just not a musically oriented person at all, got me like a Lex Records sampler for my birthday. And I don't know why she chose that. She just kind of like looked at it, and she saw it in like a record shop or something, in like a what's the HMV or whatever, and was just like, oh, this seems like something Jet would like.
Yeah, and I think that Lex Records just consistently puts out shit that a lot of people like us might like.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you 10 records that came out on the label, but I definitely know I've listened to more than 10 albums from them that are really dope. I think like even everything from like hip hop to experimental to your IDM, other type of genres. I think Jaime's Basement came out on Lex Records.
Yeah.
Test came out. I think there's a Doom album off Lex. Shout out to Lex, man, and they really shout out to them for rocking with Chuck Strangers, because I like him as well.
Yeah.
So let me give a little bit of note about the album before we get into how we know Mr. Chuck Strangers himself. It said that I got this little snippet from a website, or maybe from the Bandcamp page, or from I got it from somewhere. So it says, while recording his new EP, Boys and Girls, New York-based MC and producer Chuck Strangers came up with the mantra, "The journey is the reward." It's a sort of phrase that can disintegrate into cliche when performed disingenuously, but his philosophy permeates through Boys and Girls and helps Chuck showcase the ways in which he's grown as an artist and a man. On Secret House, when we have an artist that we haven't really discussed in proper form by reviewing their albums before, we like to talk about how we're familiar with them, or if we are at all. How do you know Chuck Strangers?
Probably because I bet on the wrong horse in 2011. Pro Era came along, and I was really, really into Odd Future at the time, being like 17.
Sure.
And I was like, like Pro Era, the traditionalists, Joey Badass 1999, obviously I thought these guys were dope. It was a tragedy when Cap Steez passed away. But I was never
and
like
rest in peace, Malcolm X.
Shouts out Malcolm X.
It was his birthday yesterday, yeah?
Oh, word. I hadn't really...
And Ho Chi Minh.
And Ho Chi Minh.
But yeah, go ahead. My bad.
Yeah, hadn't really jumped onto the Pro Era train when that was a thing. I was very kind of getting into the more avant-garde stuff and the less traditional stuff, but Chuck Strangers always kind of stood out as a member as well to me. I always thought he was dope. So
yeah. Me at the time, I was enjoying both Odd Future and the Pro Era guys.
Yeah.
And I found it kind of refreshing that they leaned into the more traditional, like boom bapish hip hop, like, sample loop bars, especially because the New York cats at the time were it was like A$AP Rocky.
Yeah. And
shout out to him, and he's got a lot of really dope music, but it was very much like New York, as compared to these guys who were like, they're wordsmiths, they're craftsmen. And back then I didn't dislike Chuck Strangers, but I didn't really notice him in the way that I noticed like Nick Caution or Joey at that time. I do still go back to the Peep the Apocalypse album, and I enjoy much and most of that. But the thing that really got me into Chuck Strangers was the Consumers Park album that came out in 2018. That's when I was like, oh, okay, he's Joey's over here making movies and being on TV shows and this and that, and we're waiting on music, but I wasn't necessarily excited. But that's when I got into Chuck, and then I started noticing collabs with other artists that I really appreciated. Like he was on the Woeful Studies, Languish Arts joints, multiple songs with the likes of Pink Siifu, YL, and I was like, oh, okay, he really rocking with these guys over here to the left of traditional boom bap shit. And on top of that, his voice is ill.
His voice is
and
sick.
I'm not saying that he's like a poet or anything, but they're fucking hard lines that are not necessarily, rock marciano or battle rap well crafted.
Not
just
intricate, but he's dope, and he's very good
dope.
at like, because of the quality of his voice, I think he sets this really kind of great mood whenever he's rapping. Like he just, his man. I got to apologize to our viewers. I was watching back at some of our previous videos, and I'm saying and so much in every sentence. My bad.
Oh, I do that all the time too. Disfluencies.
But his voice contributes so well to the mood of the individual tracks that he's performing on.
He got that cheat code voice.
He's got that cheat code voice.
It's just he could just say some real regular simple, and I'd be like, ugh, that fool's hard. You know what I mean? But yeah, he's dope, man. And this project, I gotta admit, even though I love that Consumers Park joint, I wasn't necessarily paying the closest attention to his other work. So I haven't listened to another full length other than that one, if there has been any. But this album, should we get into the album?
Yeah, let's get into the album.
Is it time for that? To the album, 7 minutes in. Shout out, maybe less than that, because we talk in the beginning. But this album's really dope. It's got a lot of it's got some features on it that are really ill. It's Pink Siifu makes an appearance. Fly Anakin, shout out to them. Navy Blue, and then there's another cat named Obiisay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I didn't say that right, but also does production on the album and raps. Very dope. And we've got a variety of different producers on this too, including Chuck Strangers himself. We've got Obiisay, Theravada, who is super dope, Animoss, Unlucky Bastards. I'm not familiar with them, or Crooklyn, but Evidence has also got a beat on this. And is it Zumo?
Yeah,
Zumo. And Zumo, which YL tracks and Evidence. We know Evidence is super dope. Animoss work with Ka a lot, and Theravada is also super ill. And
for such a short listen, there are a lot of people involved in the creation of this. And a dope thing about this record is that you wouldn't really notice how many hands had been put on the record in 20 minutes. It feels pretty cohesive across the board. Sets a very consistent tone and mood from start to finish. Everybody on there feels in the right place. I mean, to be fair, I guess if you were going to put together a mixtape of, based on the things that we review on Secret House, like, they probably have a few Navy Blue features, a few Fly Anakin features.
No doubt. Pink Siifu would
show up on there.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Animoss, we mentioned him. He works with like a Kai Solo, Rome Streets, a lot of the people that we like to talk about. But yeah, this album to me, like Consumer Park, it's just like a really dope listen. This is the type of album that you go to when you just want to hear some really dope hip hop, and you don't necessarily have to tune in to everything being said or the message or the deeper themes that come across the songs to kind of enjoy it. Sometimes you just hear some really dope shit, and sometimes he's just saying some really dope shit. But it is a vibey listen. Like, it was not one that kind of there was a song or two on the album that I was just kind of like, all right, I mean, like, I don't necessarily love that, but for the most part, it's a cohesive dope listen. And this is the kind of sound that I think a lot of our listeners will be used to. It's not drumless, but a lot of the vocal sample loops, different type of glaze on the barbecue, so to speak, and it's dope, man. Like, should we do like a favorite? Like, I got a couple bars that I wrote. I could go and list track for track on things that I think about them, but we really don't do that on our channel like that.
No. I will say, as much as I enjoyed this record, it is muddy. And I don't just mean that from like a mixing perspective, because the mix is actually pretty clean. It's fine. Cool. But I think the tone of Chuck Strange's voice in combination with these kind of very like bass and treble with very little high end on the production gives the whole thing a bit of a murky feeling, and I think it's intentional. But certainly like when Dettol dropped, I was like, oh, okay, Chuck Strange's is going in here, but also the like slowed down vocal, harmony. I don't know what it's from.
Give my love away.
Like it can be a little impenetrable. But then Prospect Park West comes on, which is my favorite track on the album, probably.
Yeah, I'm big on that one too.
And it's like a really good exercise in this kind of mood setting. We've talked a lot about albums that are very distinctly New York over the last few months. And this definitely fits in that pantheon of like New York records.
Yeah. I get that too. And Prospect, like the first track, Dettol, with, I think that's how you say it, which is just like a cleaning disinfectant.
Like a cleaning product,
right? But Prospect Park is where I was like, oh, okay, Chuck back on his shit.
Yeah.
And to me, that is a very, I don't even know how to qualify other than it's like a very New York boom bap type of track that is different than what me, a 40-year-old man or your 50-year-old grandfather. 50-year-old grandfather. I don't know how these kids are doing. My sister is a grandmother and she's like 50. But like what your parents listen to, it's not some it's produced by a cat named Crooklyn, but it don't sound like, Return of the Crooklyn Dodgers or some shit. It's got a different type of more contemporary boom bap type of appeal. And on that shit, Chuck goes the fuck off. Like he's an artist who's the level of his artistry hasn't quite permeated with the subculture, I think, as much as it maybe should have, considering who he's usually in the company of.
Yeah.
So his lyrics are not on fucking Genius yet. You know what I mean? It's going to take a fan to go ahead and do that. But
that's also, I think, a really great part of his persona and the character he plays. Fly Anakin has the last verse on the album. And Fly Anakin has a very high voice, and he raps with like more energy and more ferocity than Chuck does. And it does highlight that, given the sort of people in Chuck's orbit, he does have this kind of cool background figure thing going on sometimes. I'm not saying that in a way as in like, oh yeah, no, he's just like a side character.
Right, you got renegaded on your own shit.
But he's just, he's like this one cat, who's mad dope, but he doesn't really like put himself in the forefront in the way that, your Joey Badasses would. And honestly, that's something I like a lot about this record, is that this record sounds good in the background, sounds good in the foreground too.
Well, that one thing that I like about Chuck is that he has a kind of everyman approach. There's a variety of tracks on here where the shit he's talking about is shit that I really kind of identify with, and even though I was not a New York cat, some of the things he talks about, for instance, on Sweetdam Street, is that how you say it?
I
like
guess
that one with the Indian vocal sample loop.
I think it's African.
Okay.
I think it could be like Somali. Or
something.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know that. but
it's
like
a street in New York though.
That's that's what I consider. Like it's about him basically being on the block as a young kid.
Yeah.
And as in California, as like little 12, 13-year-old, we was doing similar things, and the way he bars off on it is just really dope. And some of the lines are mad simple, like sour Skittle handoffs. I know the man in the middle is soldiers we got belittled. Time made us official. And then he's like, the irie was lime green, self-esteem. And he stacks in such it's not like a really like stacky, like let me count the syllables, but he'll hit you with a variety of different visuals that kind of make a doper picture in a way that a lot of the other artists that we like, do as well. Billy Woods, even in a sense. But like, he says 90s city summer heat booming, the Freon. The Freon shit we on, different from what happened. Fuck rapping. I'm from where shit's backwards. How the fuck this shit happen? Me and my niggas need mulligans, only built for, he just goes off. And I definitely am not doing those lyrics justice, but with his voice, the beat, and the way that he kind of approaches these ideas, it's a really dope listen that it don't got to be background. If you sit there and you go into like what he's trying to get at, sometimes you like, damn, Chuck, I fucking feel you. Like I'm from the same type of, cloth. Like it happened to my cousins. You know what I mean? Like he talks about people on there that. Well, actually, I'm thinking about another album that we're reviewing today too. But he gets it off.
Yeah, and there's like a maturity to it.
Yeah,
like
he's smart.
It's not just like overtly nostalgic, but also there's a bit more of he sounds kind of grown on here. If you look back at some of the older pro era shit, like it's very kind of like youthful exuberance hitting you like constantly from start to finish.
We gonna take over. We gonna
Chuck Strangers is 31 years old. He's the same age as me. Right? Okay. So I can see, he's in that place in his life where he's kind of like, okay, I'm still young. I'm still accomplishing things. I'm still, outwardly facing. But at the same time, there is that introspection. But it kind of reminds me of, and maybe I'm reading too far into this, but I had a conversation years ago with somebody, and I don't even remember who I was talking to, but out here, the difference between the Japanese concept of nostalgia versus a Western idea of nostalgia.
Oh, you're gonna have to hit me to that. I don't know that.
In the West, nostalgia is more of a desire to go back to a time where there are certain things that you resonated with very closely. In Japan, a nostalgia is seen more as like a gratitude towards things that have happened in the past, and like a willingness to sort of take that with you as you move forwards. And honestly, the sensation that you get on tracks like Sodom Street, for me, is the Japanese sense of nostalgia, where there's this kind of sense of like, yeah, this is where we were at, this is where we're at now, and I'm grateful for that, even with all of the kind of difficulty that is confronted, that I had to confront, to become who I am today.
Okay.
And that's kind of the feeling I got from this record.
I feel that. Like, I think that there's a lot that people can kind of unpackage in, just a few bars on this. You get a lot of shit. Like, one of my favorite tracks is Say, which is produced by Obiisay. And the way that Chuck starts that shit off, Chuck Stranger starts that shit off, is just so fucking raw. He says, I spawn on an outer ledge. Food desert means left for dead. New efforts bringing in bread. I hold my head through the interim. Again, on paper, you could read that and be like, oh, yeah, that's fucking hard. Food deserts, you know what I mean? Like, I spawn on the outer ledge. Yeah, I play games, you know what I mean? I might be sniping. And new efforts bringing in bread, that's motivated me. I hold my head through the interim. It's just dope shit to say. And with Chuck's approach and his kind of production choices and the songs that the beats that he wants to go over, he has a really, like, I think that he's got a very good understanding of what his voice works with and complements.
Yes.
Because even though a lot of these beats could very easily be described as like, contemporary hip hop, boom bap type abstract experimental beats, he goes in places that I haven't necessarily heard a lot of other MCs go with the production.
Yeah.
On Outlaw, the joint where it's like Tupac Outlaws and shit, right? That beat is fucked up. I don't even like that beat is really fucked up. And I don't mean fucked up like it's janky or it's whack, but the chop on it is very kind of, what is the word that I'm looking for? It's hard to catch like a syncopation to it.
It's like off kilter.
You know what I mean? It is
quite catch a groove. It's a bit like the pattern that we reviewed.
And it's like normally, you have an artist that works over that. It almost feels like they have to completely disregard the beat. But the way that I feel like Chuck I feel weird calling him Chuck. I feel the way that Chuck Strangers gets off on it, it's like, yo, your voice is also complementing this as kind of a molasses type of instrument, a syrupy glaze over that shit that just really goes off. I want to say that I should play the beat a little bit just to kind of give some type of context to it, even though all of our recent videos have been getting flagged for copyright strikes. I'm gonna go ahead and hit y'all with this, just a little tidbit if I could.
Sorry, Lex. Lex Records. Sorry.
I ain't mad at you at all. Hey, yo, who the fuck you want to be when you grow up, right? Outlaws, off beats. Ain't no coming to agreements, no, I mean this. We outlaws, off beats. Yeah, the world is yours, it's a short lease. It's it's my turn, I need a piece, and we worry about peace. The piece is all my youngins ever seen a need. Bring a man to his knees. I seen a piece turn 0 to 3, and from 3 to having just enough for you and me. We built this, they admire their ingenuity.
Yeah. You hear like that one vocal phrase come in, and it's just like comes in out of nowhere. I don't know how to count to that shit. Like, it's just a very kind of unusual approach, and I really like those type of risk, and I like when an artist can kind of separate themselves from their contemporaries by not doing something that feels like I'm trying very hard, but something that says like I'm different too.
It's almost, and I'm glad this genre label is dead, but it's almost IDM.
Mm-hmm.
It's
they started calling it like brain dance or some shit, right?
I mean,
terrible.
Whatever,
the worst,
like,
one of the worst names.
I mean, putting intelligent in your genre label is all kinds of dumb. So I'm glad we don't call it IDM anymore. But that's definitely something that it kind of evokes to me. Is just like even like on some Boards of Canada type shit, or like
dental, or a variety of just different type of still in the tradition of hip hop. It's sample, it's loop, it's electronic. You know what I mean? Like, he just I feel kind of like I'm rambling and kind of just repeating myself a lot on this review, but people who are enjoying this shit, like, you're right, and I'm right there with you, man. A lot of these tracks are really good. A lot of these tracks are denser than the sound might just evoke to you immediately, and I fuck with it. What are your favorite tracks or least favorite? Or I gotta admit that as much as a big fan of Evidence that I am, I didn't really care for that one. The Devin Hester joint with the slow kind of creeper vibe beat. And I don't have any notes on Benevolence by Theravada. Typically, I love Theravada. One of his tracks last year that he did with who was it? Wolf Morpheus and Ali was one of my favorite songs of the year. I don't have notes on that. I imagine it's just because maybe I forgot to put notes, but I don't know if that song kind of stuck with me. And those are the only two that I really just don't care for on the album.
I don't know if I disliked any of the tracks on here. I don't think there were any skips on here for me. Album's too short for me to feel like, oh man, this track again. Like, nothing overstays its welcome. You know, it's all well sequenced as well. Like, the album makes sense in the order it's in. I always feel like closing out with another person's verse is a gamble, because it just gives you, like, you want to be thinking about the artist as the album comes to a conclusion. But I think Fly Anakin's perfect on there in the conclusion. I would have probably said Prospect Park West and Hurry, and maybe Sudam Street. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Are my favorites on the album. I mean, I could go either way on Benevolence, but I don't have a problem with it. It's a couple minutes, like, whatever.
I like Say a lot, Sudam Street, and Prospect Park, really dope. Also, I mentioned Outlaw. That one, I listened to it not to be like, I really like this song. I listened to it to be like, this fool Chuck Strangers is fucking ill. Like, I might just have to think about this one more. But, the Pink Siifu and the Fly Anakin, and also the navy blue verses are serviceable. They're dope. I don't have any notes on those lyrics or anything like that, but I think Pink Siifu says, I do have one note. Sample feel like I'm getting head outside. That's a smooth cat, man. That's a cat that, like, fucking performs with his shirt off or something. You know what I mean? But it's not like a hype show. Yeah. Pink Siifu's an ill ass dude. I like this album. Overall, I would highly recommend this to people just like really dope hip hop music. Yeah, this everyday man shit. Like, this is,
I recommend this to people who wear a hoodie and shorts when they really shouldn't be.
Oh, okay, Canadians. No, I'll put mad people onto this type of shit. I think I got skater homies who would probably be down to listen to this shit too, and most likely I will play some of this shit when we do events in the future. But yeah, Chuck Strangers, the boys and girls. Lex Records, Chuck Strangers. We've got the details in the show notes. Go support him. Go support independent, local, underground, avant-garde, experimental, abstract artists. And
on that note, unrelated, but the homies of Massive Fermenting Dregs are going on tour in the US. They've thrown up a Kickstarter. Go support that. I know some of you guys like Massive Fermenting Dregs.
Word. Word. And my shirt support people too. You know what I mean? But
True.
yeah, Secret House against.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm the founder of 23 different radical leftist organizations, including the Africans Fighting Racism and Oppression, or AFRO, if you will, the Black Revolutionary Organization, or BRO, and also the Black Revolutionary Underground Heroes.
Bruh?
Yeah, bruh.